Okay, the first move on the weight room warm-up is a lying hip crossover. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to lay down on the ground, you're going to get flat out on your back, you're going to put your arms straight out to the side with your palms facing up. Knees are going to be together, heels together, toes together. Bring your belly button in towards your spine, flatten your back out to the floor, and all we're going to do is drop your hips down to one side as far as we can, get a good stretch right here, through your obliques, through your side, down into your hip, bring it back up to the top, and switch sides. Nice and slow and controlled. We're going to do 3 to 4 reps on each side, nice and slow and controlled, working through the greatest range of motion possible. And then you're going to lift your feet off the floor. What we're looking for here is a 90-degree angle at your hips, 90-degree angle at your knees. Toes dorsiflexed, pulled up towards your shins, and we're going to do the same move. Drop down and back up. Without your feet on the floor, you're able to get a greater range of motion, put a little bit more stretch on your hips, and you're starting to get some muscle activation because you're fighting gravity a little bit more now that your feet aren't on the ground. So there's, plain and simple, your first move is hip crossovers, feet on the floor, and then feet elevated. From there, we flip over onto our bellies, and we move into what we call our scorpions. Here, arms out to the side, shoulders down on the ground. What we're aiming to do is take your opposite side heel and reach it up towards your fingers. Make sure you're reaching with your heel and not with your toes. We don't want to see this. That's reaching with my toes. This is reaching with my heels. As soon as you make that switch from toes to heels, you'll feel a stretch right down through your core, through your hip flexors, through your quads, and really working on getting that core warmed up, getting everything loose, getting everything ready to go. On this one, since there's only one variation, we're going to do 8 repetitions on each side. Then we're going to move up to a push-up position. Calf raises, all you're going to do is drop your heels to the ground, lift your hips up in the air, and then pop all the way up onto your toes. Working on some good ankle mobility, stretch out your calf. Looking for 8 repetitions on each side. From there, both feet down on the ground, we're going to move into our inchworms. Again, calves and hamstrings, getting some big time stretch and activation here. Take little baby ankle steps, walking your feet as far up towards your hands as possible. Get a good stretch through your hamstrings, and then walk back as far as you can. When we're in this position with the hands out above our heads, really working on core activation and shoulder stabilization. Walk back up as far up as you can, and back it out as far as you can. Glutes and hamstrings again with a straight leg. It's called a straight leg deadlift, a Romanian deadlift. There's a bunch of different names for it, and everybody has a different name. So I'm just going to demonstrate it for you. And what we're looking to do here is reach out as far as you can and get your heel as high in the air as you can. Now you notice that when I say straight leg, I'm not keeping this lower leg locked. I don't want that leg locked. I want a little bit of a bend in that leg. And the key is to reach as far as you can with both your arms and your legs. You'll feel more work in your leg that's elevated, working on keeping that foot fully extended, because you're working your hamstrings and glutes to raise that leg up in the air. So you're really getting activation on both legs, not just one. Once you've finished both legs, we're going to move into our lunge variations. On our lunges, we have quite a few different variations here. And the reason for that is they really get your hips loose and fired up. Your hips are arguably the most important part of your body in all of sports, especially baseball. So we're going to start out with just a straight forward lunge, drop down and back up. Forward lunge, down and back up, chin up, chest up the whole time. Take a nice big step forward so that you get a good stretch through your hip flexor and pop back up. Now our next variation, as we lunge down, we're going to take our opposite hand, our back leg hand, and raise it up in the air to get more of a stretch on your hip flexor. Moving forward from that, we're going to do what we call the elbow to instep. Elbow to instep might be the most complex movement that we do. You're going to lunge forward. If your left leg goes forward, your left elbow is going to drop down toward your left instep. As I drop down here, I get a strong stretch on my back hip flexor, as well as my front side groin, hamstring, and glutes. So again, we're working both legs on a single movement. Drop down, think about chin up, chest up, nice flat back. We don't want to be arched. We want everything straight in line, looking athletic as much as possible. From the side, everything's nice and lined up. I'm not hunched, I'm not sagging my back leg. I keep everything nice and lined up and drop down as low as possible. Now our next variation on the lunge is a lunge and twist. On this, I like to have guys with hands behind your ears lunge forward, twist as far as possible toward your front leg. Back up, alternate legs. Now our next lunge variation, I told you there were a lot of them, is our lateral lunge. We're going to stand with our feet, good athletic width, a little bit wider than shoulders, and you're going to lunge down to one side, drop down, get a good stretch through your groin, push through your heel to come back to the top. Lunge and push. Now to get a little bit more hip mobility, we're going to do our crossover lunges. Here you're going to step left foot across your right, drop your right heel, or your right knee down toward your left heel, and back up. You can see how we started this warm-up laying down on the ground, and now we're getting into some movements where you're in and out of movements, you're starting to get your blood flow, you're starting to really get your core temperature up. So you should start to sweat a little bit at this point. Again, not looking to crush you on this warm-up. We're just trying to get your body loose, get you ready for lifting. So there's your lunge variations. Next up, we're going to move into your shoulder mobility. Now, as throwing athletes, your shoulders are extremely important. You've got to be able to move your shoulder when you're hitting the ball. You've got to be able to drive all the way through the hitting zone. When you're throwing the ball, pitchers, you're coming here. You've got to get the lay back on your throwing arm, and you've got to whip through as you're throwing the ball. Middle infielders, how many times do you scoop? You have to throw sidearm. Sometimes you come over the top. Outfielders, you've got that long throwing motion. And everybody throughout the game has to use all of those throwing motions at some point. So shoulder mobility, shoulder integrity is of utmost importance. So let's move on to your shoulder warm-up.